But it's just a quick headline from each group into what some of the discoveries have been. And then I think our web-based conversation fraternity have one or two things to bring to each group. So we just have to make sure they're spread. They've been typed, so they'll come to you to aid your afternoon discussions. And then we'll kind of move on. The groups are working with enhancing access and quality of experience. So access, Group A. Oh, could you have a mobile mic, please? Hello, Group A, where are you? Are you Group A?
Our topic is access, and access is one, fundamental to cultural heritage. Access must be defined in a broad way with input from social and physical sciences research. Access must be managed comprehensively in diverse ways.
Brilliant. Group 2 on access. Oh, you would be the other side.
So, science for access. We are behind the blackboard there. But I can read them for you. So our discoveries for Science for Access are 4. The first, communicating science and cultural heritage, has to address societal needs. The second, digitization is a good global solution, but is challenged by differences and strong differences in local and regional policies. The third, 2 severe challenges are semantics and translation. And the fourth, we stressed on the importance of communicating conservation science and heritage at the local level with the involvement of local communities.
Thank you. And then moving on to green policies for conservation, Group A.
Okay. Can I stay seated or do I need to stand up? Let me stand. I need this. No, I'll do it. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is green. Green conservation. We had 4 discoveries. Is that the word that we're using? We had 4 discoveries. One, that science can help us to better understand materials and their deterioration so that we can create tailor-made solutions for museums and objects, museum objects and sites. So, for example, we talked about creating specific microclimates for objects rather than having a single standard for environment within a museum. This could reduce energy consumption and also minimize treatments. And this implies that we use appropriate, reasonable standards to fit the individual objects. So that was the first discovery. The second one is that science can help us to study the use of traditional technologies for more energy efficiency. As all places have their traditional adaptive strategies and they're related to their climates, we can learn from those traditional environments that have been tested over time and used over time. The third discovery was that science can help us to develop more green, less toxic, and less dangerous materials and technologies for conservation treatments. And that's something, a place where science can really help us to make a strong contribution toward green conservation. And finally, the fourth discovery was that by valorizing traditional technologies, we are also, in and of itself, using ancient knowledge and therefore conserving our cultural heritage. We need scientific investigation to be able to determine which traditional technologies are green in terms of the environment, in terms of human health, and in terms of efficiency. And the examples that we used were traditional craftsmanship, things like traditional biocides, traditional climate controls. So the idea is to look at these traditional ways of doing things and determining which things are actually green and can help us to promote green conservation.
Thank you. Moving on to Science for Diversity, Group A. Sorry, Greens. You do matter.
So this is Group B. We went the direction of thinking of discoveries in terms of dreams. So these are dreams we discovered. The conservation community that serves is fully aware how to contribute to sustainability. That conservation science serves is fully aware of how to contribute to sustainability. The second one was that we can combine ethically and economically powerful arguments for sustainable behavior rather than having to choose one or the other. And the third one was that there would be opened an interdisciplinary approach, including new disciplines, creating broader and integrated approaches in developing new research projects.
Thank you, and my apologies again. So supporting sustainability was here.
Our first discovery is quite obvious, that science for diversity, it requires interdisciplinary approach and combination of natural sciences, engineering sciences, and humanistics and social sciences as well. First of all, our main discovery is that we recognize the importance of traditional knowledge which is not always codified, published, and it's usually communicated orally. And we discovered that this kind of knowledge is not always adequately exploited. But it's also acknowledged in some political documents and by other sciences, like, for example, medicine. We also stress that understanding of heritage is conditioned by the traditional knowledge used by users, stakeholders, and generally by the society. And of course, we recognize that it's an important task for the conservation sciences. And of course, our team is related to supporting sustainability through the use and learning from traditional techniques and approaches, and we discover that this kind of research has an important impact on social challenges like cultural sustainability. So we have to, by understanding of these traditional techniques and this traditional knowledge, we can understand ourselves, but also we can understand other cultures, which is very important in times of migrations of a large group of people. We also discovered that this traditional knowledge is important for environmental sustainability. As an example, it was quite often quoted, for example, some passive solution for houses and so on, which can be adopted successfully for cultural heritage, but not only. Of course, economical sustainability is also important, and this kind of traditional knowledge has impact, and understanding of this traditional knowledge has impact on economical sustainability. And of course, at the end, it has impact on conservation, self-sustainability. So we think that just using this traditional knowledge, we have kind of the time capsule in which we can test materials, approaches, technologies, treatments, which were tested very frequently, many years, centuries, and so on. Thank you very much.
And Group B is here for that. Yeah.
In fact, you'd go back to diversity. That we were the group Diversity B. We explored a number of stories about using old and new materials and techniques, and decided that if you take a number of cases that you have a whole diversity of approaches. The concept of the long term was very important in our group. So the interventions have a long tail, and it's important to document this and to share information so you can make an evaluation afterwards. We also explored the importance of time frames, that it's a different time frame if you work in a laboratory where you observe something for 1 day or 1 month, and if you use something for 30 years and then evaluate, and that's an important element in conservation science. We also explored the concept of maintenance, and we emphasized the importance of sociability of stakeholders, and that in fact conservation scientists should try to be involved in groups of different stakeholders taking care of heritage. And this is also the concept of diversity is a combination of all these factors. And the last point we wanted to make is to emphasize, like UNESCO does, that sustainability is in fact not only ecology, economy, the social aspects, but also culture. So that's something we want to explore, the fourth pillar of sustainability, and to develop that idea.
Thank you. And moving on to emerging heritage.
Emerging right here. Okay, the title of our discussion group is Science for Emerging Heritage, Recognizing and Adapting to Changing Cultural Heritage Values. Marie Berducou kicked us off and immediately confronted us with the fact that we're talking about science, not conservation science. Hello, Mum. And Andrea, she's also watching. Okay, then we're talking about emerging heritage. What is emerging? And we notice that it's not just emerging up, it's also emerging broad. So we haven't defined that yet, but it's a lot. And changing cultural heritage values. What values are we talking about? There's heaps of values, especially if there's a broad emergence. So we discovered changes from well, this emerging heritage, it contains new stuff, it contains digital stuff, different formats, it contains processes instead of stuff, and reinterpretation, for example, of old stuff that was never valued, but all of a sudden becomes interesting. And we see changes from the Western traditional freeze frame to keeping the spirit alive, which is a more Eastern and New Age approach, where it's interesting that that was already an Eastern approach with the Industrial Revolution. We've been told from our Eastern colleagues the Western tradition got adopted, and now we're all moving east again. So there's the change also from container, where there's still a challenge for studying new materials, to content, digital formats, new media, to the context. And this is where the values start playing an important role, because once this context and the non-material side of heritage becomes important, you have to ask yourself, what is it? And this is where meaning and values come in, and where the shift is from expert opinion to public opinion, and that this is when you start including society. And this is the main theme for today, how to connect to society. So also from material values to societal values, from the conservation science in its material existence to a much more inclusive set of lots of sciences, or simply said, from corrosion to community. And as dematerialization continues, meaning and values become more important, and this is the social context of which we're now going to dream.
Thank you. And science for macro, using skills and tools and knowledge from fields outside conservation. Where are you hiding?
So our scope was science for macroscale, using science to support heritage decision making. big question. And so, first of all, we said that science can help decision-making at every scale. So we are happy of that, at least. But with the better use or with an innovative use of existing technologies, for example, GIS, GPS, mobile technologies, but it was focused that we have to respect regional and local specificities. It's not a matter of globalization at a macro scale, but a macro scale respecting the local particularity and specificity. First point. Oh. We have seen in the group that we can see for at the moment an evolution from a closed expert system, so a system in which experts are providing information, to an open-sourced system with the participation of new information providers at a local level. For example, here has been given the example of, in England, of English Heritage Project. The name is Images of England, in which any person can take a picture and give it to put it in a database, and also give information on the state of conservation of a specific good. And so this is another way of providing the information and gathering the information at a very, very large level. And third, we say that we need sustainable platforms with a continuous updating and maintenance. So we are at that step, and we didn't start to speak about dreams.
Thank you. That is everyone. I haven't missed. No. Thank you. That's becoming increasingly thought-provoking in terms of learning. The next stage, I think it's important that you begin to think about the future and how this work, these discoveries, these habits that you have already can be strengthened. And that means a little bit of dreaming. What does strengthening mean? What does it mean? What would we see happening in 2 or 3 years' time that's different from now? And how might we start that journey? What sort of things could we do that starts that journey as a sector in this process? Because there's lots of challenge in the very brilliant thinking that you've been doing. So if you can do that, remember you don't have to complete it. It's giving us a sense of direction. Tomorrow we'll begin to articulate this more easily. But remember the big lesson from organizational change and social change is that you need to know where you're going and why, and you need to take practical steps to move along the way. So that wonderful phrase, be the change you want to create. So good luck in the next hour.